Fall. It means there's a crisp chill in the air. It's time to gather wood for the season's first fire, and the leaves are piling up outside. But along the coast of South Carolina, fall is kind of like summer, only cooler. Fires are simply for roasting oysters, and the only raking you might do is in a sand trap of one of our many challenging golf courses. Tap now to discover the joys of fall on the coast of South Carolina, or visit fallinsc.com.
Hey y'all, Darius Rucker here. A lot of people ask me, what inspires your music? And one of the big things is a strong sense of place. That's why I love my home state of South Carolina and want to share the awesome things it has to offer. From the beautiful mountains down to the sunny coast, it's got it all. Not to mention two of my personal favorites, great golf and amazing food. Come see why I love this place. Visit discoversouthcarolina.com.
Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis, a podcast dedicated to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. Well, the end of the world is here, or is it? Hey,
That's
everybody.
the question of the day.
Well, we've reached July 22nd, 2020, also known as the day the world will end to Lori and crew. And I'm not even going to lie. When I woke up this morning and my eyes popped open, I looked around for a second to make sure I was still home.
Yeah. No, I was good.
Yeah, no, I'm teasing. I mean, I've had fun looking at all the memes online. We tweeted out some songs last night. I've been singing End of the World as We Know It by REM all day. I really have. So the end of the world didn't happen. At least not yet. We still have till midnight. Or is it maybe Hawaii time?
Yeah, they spent a lot of time there, so.
I don't know. So that would be maybe, 5 a.m. tomorrow. We still technically could see the end of the world, but I wonder how Lori and her buddies are feeling right now.
Yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. We've talked in the past about how probably there'll be an excuse, but if you think about it, Chad really don't have many people to tell that, there's a plan B, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, since we're still here, we thought we would do a podcast for you guys tonight. I mean, how can you not on July 22nd? Come on.
Yeah, we had to.
We had to. So there's been a little bit of news, some new stuff happening. Since the end of the world didn't happen, this case will go on. Thank goodness. So the prosecutor, Mr. Wood, filed a motion, as most of you know now, to prevent the preliminary hearings for Chad and Lori both. He wants to prevent a live stream of that trial for, I guess, video. And everybody's pretty bothered about it, to be honest. What do you think about it, Fruit Loop? I mean, it's kind of back and forth for me.
Yeah, I can see why. And then I can also see, we want to see, we want to know, we want to hear. And we've discussed possibilities of what that means. Is it graphic images they're going to show that they don't want streamed, or, just what is it?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I think the prosecutor is just preemptively sort of protecting his case, where, when she's found guilty, and I fully believe she will be, she's, going to look for any reason to appeal.
Yeah.
And if she thinks that this case is just the stream of the preliminary, there's so much out there about these people. You would have to sequester a jury right now for the next 2 or 3 years, or however long it's going to take for these people to go to trial, to prevent most people from hearing something about the case.
Yeah. So we're not going to get in an uproar about it, because we think we'll somehow at least hear.
Right.
And who knows? Edens could say, due to COVID, we have to allow it, and we'll make provisions in the court so some of that stuff isn't seen.
Yeah. I think he's may have to do something. I mean, he just approved for it to be streamed not too long ago.
Yeah, it
And
was.
so it's curious as to why this close to the preliminaries all of the sudden.
Yeah, so you have July 10th. He approves for Court TV to live stream the hearing or whatever it's called, and then on the 17th, we get the stuff from prosecution saying, we don't want it. So
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of theories online. Just people, legal analysts, people that are lawyers. Some people say it's for protection. He just doesn't want, in any way, for all the work they've done to be the reason that maybe there's a retrial. I don't know, but
I would think though, if that was the case, if he was afraid and he wasn't going to be able to pick, jurors, then why didn't he ask for it to be sealed?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think ultimately the public has a right to be in those preliminary hearings.
Yeah.
So you can't, I mean, when they sealed the record about the attorneys, that's understandable because clearly there had to have been something communicated there that was sensitive, potential evidence. I mean, they probably had to lay out, the prosecutor probably had to lay out what he knew had been discussed, not what had been discussed, but they're probably have the lawyer. Oh my gosh, y'all. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, if I seem a little off, I fell asleep at 4:00 this morning.
It was the excitement.
I was just waiting to get,
Yeah.
zapped out of my bed. But so I'm a little tired, not even going to lie. So let me try that again. It could just be that the lawyer had to communicate to the judge some things that were discussed between him and Chad. I don't know how it goes with that, but that was sealed. You can't seal a preliminary, I don't think. I mean, the public has a right to be in that hearing.
Yeah.
And if COVID wasn't happening, we could all line up until they hit capacity in that courtroom. So according to Justin Lum, who he tweeted this out, asked some clarification, and I wanted to mention him, so I'm not stealing his tweet. It says, this is not a motion to close or seal the hearing. Wood says audio and transcript would be available so news organizations can still report on the preliminary if the state grants the motion. The whole state of Idaho has been hit with media coverage regarding the children. Well, obviously.
Yeah. So that to me, it just screams they don't want something out there.
Yeah. And I mean, it almost seems like it's just something visual.
Visually, yes, because audio's good.
Yeah, and now it doesn't specify, will we get a live audio stream? I mean, like you say, Edens could totally just say, we're going to stream the hearing.
Yeah.
He's already approved it. But if the prosecutor's asking, it'll be interesting to see, does he side with the prosecutor? There's a reason he's asking. Or is this just sort of Wood saying, well, let me ask for it, and I know he's not going to grant this. It's going to be televised, but in a way it covers him. So we will find out. There is a hearing set for Monday on July 27th at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time where this will be heard. So we will know Monday whether or not they will allow the video.
Yeah. And we know Lori and Means and that whole crew, it's going to be a circus anyways. So this could be, like you said, just Wood covering himself so he can say, well, I tried as much as I could for her to have a fair trial.
Right. So we will see Monday, and hopefully they will allow the video. I may not be able to live tweet as much on the August the 3rd if it's available for us to do so. I didn't forget it was my daughter's birthday, but my daughter's turning 15, and so she can go get her driver's permit. So we have to do that. So I'm going to try to, but she does sleep late. So if it's available, I'll be able to do most of it, but I'm going to have to definitely pop off to celebrate my oldest girl.
And normally at the DMV, it's a long line, so maybe you can...
It's different these days. Yeah. Now you have to have an appointment.
Yeah, it's weird.
To go in. So what's going on just before we get into the thick of the podcast today? One thing we didn't talk about on the last one, Fruit Loop, that I noticed, I kind of got the feeling Lori looked a little drugged up to me in jail when I rewatched that.
She was very calm.
She was super calm. I mean, she obviously has access to mental health services in jail. And if you rewatch the last one and then the one before that, she definitely seemed a little more like a rag doll.
Yeah, and we know from reading court documents prior to, like, way back, when she was in her, custody battle with Joe, that they did mention she had high anxiety, so
Yeah, among other
maybe.
things.
Yeah, yeah, really. But
Anyway, it was just a small observation. I just noticed she just seemed a little more limp. I
yeah,
guess that's the
yep.
word. Kind of like me today. So we're still waiting on the toxicology for the kids, and as far as we know, their remains have not been released yet.
Yeah,
It's been 6 weeks.
yeah. They're, and we don't know. I
Yeah.
know that's hard.
It's got to be hard for the families. I'm sure there'll be some piece associated with giving the kids a proper burial and um, honoring them in the way
Yeah.
they want to.
And then also they wanna get this right.
Oh yeah, I don't think that anybody who follows the case and really cares is going to say that they should hurry up. Our need
Yeah.
to know is obviously there, but we need justice to be served, and that requires a ton of patience when you're talking about courts and trials and everything else.
Yeah. I can't help but think that Alex's autopsy, Tammy's autopsy, and the kids, they all are kinda right there together, and I can imagine they're trying to rule out or find a cause of death,
Hmm.
and we know in doing those autopsies, it's just not, "Okay, I'm gonna put it in and run it through,
Hmm.
run these things through, and then it'll tell me what killed them." You have to know, kinda what to look for and what poisons or whatever to look for in order to find those, so
Right. So the other thing I read online from a local is that Mark Means has been at the jail yesterday and today.
he was trying to get all that time in
trying
before
to
today.
trying to get his last payment before she
Yes,
was taken
yes.
off this earth. Um, but if you remember at the last hearing, the what is a conference, the pre-trial conference, he did say he had a lot of discovery coming his way. So we were thinking maybe he got that discovery and he's starting to go through it with Lori, trying to figure out some defense. I don't know.
That sounds like it could be it.
Yeah. So that's kind of all for like basic news that's new. The world didn't end. Waiting on toxicology. Wood filed the motion. So the two big topics we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to kind of dive in a little bit, not really dive in. We're going to do a little basic background and kind of where we are on Melani Pawlowski. Um, there are a lot of people that are very new to this case that listen to our podcast. So for a lot of you seasoned guys that know what color nail polish Lori had on at the Hawaii hearing, I know you do. It was the blue, green. That there are people that know everything about this case, and then there are people who just know like the scratch of the surface. So we're gonna kind of take some of the major players every now and then and do a little bit of their backstory. We did a little bit on Melanie, I believe the last one or the one before that.
Yeah, I
And
think that was more when she was a kid, so
yeah.
yeah.
So, to our newer listeners and the people that are new to the case, we're going to kind of look out for you guys too and give you a little bit of backstory on some of these people. So, we're going to start off with Melani Pawlowski, who obviously, those of you following the case, you know that's Lori's niece. And there was actually another piece of news this week is that Melani Pawlowski had filed a motion to hold her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux, in contempt, and the court denied that.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. So essentially, the court says that Brandon showed persuasive evidence that contradicts Melanie's testimony. She had nothing to do with the attempted murder of Brandon.
Yeah.
And I think what is important to note here is now in their custody papers, we're starting to see the court acknowledge the fact that Melanie is a person of interest in Brandon's shooting. Now, we all know that, but this is kind of a newer thing where they're naming her actually as a person of interest.
Yeah, and we said from the get-go that from Brandon's statements that he had proof that she was involved.
Yeah, I don't know what we don't know what he saw. And from what I've heard, the 911 call that Brandon made, I've heard a snippet of it, but I've heard that what was released to the press was heavily redacted. So it could be that maybe obviously we know he recognized the Jeep as being Charles's Jeep that Tylee drove.
Yeah.
So essentially, her motion, it accused Brandon of giving misleading and false statements to the court. And Brandon had told the court that Melani was hiding from law enforcement after he was shot at, and which happened on October the 2nd of 2019.
Yeah, because we know she didn't pick her kids up that day.
Right. So they normally had.
Zicam knows that when you live life to the fullest, you never want to let a cold slow you down. With Zicam's cold shortening products, you can actually shorten colds when taken at the first sign. And with the winter chill in the air, you need the #1 cold shortening brand to help shorten a cold when taken at the first sign this season. Because you should never let a cold stop you from missing out on your favorite moments of the season. Find Zicam in your local cold and flu aisle.
This time or place or this system to pick the kids up, and she just didn't show up.
Yep.
And also, if I remember correctly, didn't Brandon accuse her of giving their son a Fitbit watch that had location?
So she could track the location. Yep.
Because she did not know where Brandon lived at that point. So she was trying to find him.
Yeah.
To shoot at him.
Wow.
And the court goes on to say, based on circumstances, the court does not find it unreasonable for Brandon to believe that Melani was hiding from law enforcement. And they also say she never provided Brandon with her new address when she abruptly moved from Arizona to Idaho in late October. We kind of know it was the 31st is when the private investigator took the picture of her and Alex loading the U-Haul.
But we know she was preparing her the bedrooms for the kids and all. I don't know if you remember, she did say that in that.
Well, she said that, but she also put all their stuff on the side of the road.
Exactly.
It's like it didn't fit in the U-Haul. And according to Brandon, it was very expensive stuff.
Yeah.
But she had a note there that said for free. But I remember in an interview, she had said that, it was all junk. It was, it was broken or stained or whatever. But,
yeah,
she could never be.
That was a big U-Haul.
That was a big U-Haul. You could totally get a mattress in there. Come on.
Yep.
And so the court goes on to say that evidence showed service was effective, and Melani knew about the hearing on December the 11th. She didn't show up for it. What happened on December 11th? That's the day Tammy Daybell was exhumed.
Yep.
That's the day they exhumed her body for the autopsy, the day before Alex dies. So that is the hearing that Melani did not show up for, which in turn led to Brandon getting sole legal custody authority for their kids.
Which we're glad he got.
Well, yeah. I mean, for those of you that are new to the case, she had been telling people that Chad and Lori had told her that her 2 middle kids were zombies. We all know what happens to kids in this family when they're deemed to be zombies.
Yeah, and I think Melanie Gibb is testifying. That's part of her testimony.
Yeah, that's
what Melanie told her.
Right. She's a witness for Brandon, and she's going to testify not only that Melanie said the kids were zombies, but also that Melanie had went to Hawaii in October with Lori, which would have been after Tylee was killed and before, maybe, we don't know if it's before or after the shot on Brandon.
Yep.
Because we don't know exactly what date she was gone with her. But we may find out in this custody hearing. Melanie Gibb was at the courthouse for the last hearing, but they did not call her.
Yep.
So the thing for me is, we've talked about this some today, is obviously Melanie is very heavily pregnant at this point. I would say she has to be close to 8 months, if not a little past it. And she's been noticeably absent from anywhere online. She only opened up her Facebook on her birthday to post the big long post about her mom and that sort of thing. But her and Ian have seemingly dropped off the face of the earth.
Yep. Nobody's seen him.
No. I mean, she's just, she's just disappeared. So I kind of, speaking of Doomsday, I'm not even going to lie. I sort of thought maybe we would get some charges today. I thought that would have been sweet.
Yeah, that would have been, it'd been fitting.
Just really to put a wrench into their Doomsday. But, okay, so me and Fruit Loop, sometimes, I guess, at the end of the day, when I'm sort of tired and chilling out in my bed, she and I'll get to texting some. And 2 nights ago, you texted me something that blew my mind. And even though I didn't really think it would happen, it was a good theory, which is, what did you say that about today?
Oh, I was like, what if? Because you know that tweet went out that said that A plus bail bondsman, everything had been approved on July 10th. They had verified they had the money to get out, and then they're just waiting on them to, like pay the money. And so I'm laying there thinking, and I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be like crazy if they posted bail like now,
Yeah.
and then we're out, because we all know there's whatever they're supposed to be doing, but
Well, maybe it was the melatonin kicked in, but I sat there and thought about that for 20 minutes. I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. I mean, I don't think they would get far, but that was a really good theory.
I know, I kept waiting on my phone to go off, the little Vine link thing.
It's happened once.
Yeah.
So back to Melanie and Brandon's custody battle papers that just came out. I thought it was interesting that Melanie said in her motion for contempt that her 4 kids have been unjustly kept from her since October.
But she fled. She left.
Not only that, but she told Brandon, you can keep the kids. I'm going to Idaho.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden they've been unjustly kept from her.
Yeah, somehow I don't think she gets like leaving your kids.
Yeah.
Like you move to another state without your kids, and you're going to divorce your husband, who we've talked about it. I mean, she lived in like a $900,000 house and
yeah.
had her kids. It seemed by videos and pictures that they got along. I mean, even Brandon said in one of his statements, I was blown away that she wanted a divorce.
Yeah. I was thinking about Melanie versus Lori today. And I think the difference is that Melanie had a very crazy childhood, obviously. We went through that in the last podcast. If you want to learn more about when she was a little kid, you can listen to the previous one. But it seems like for a while, Melanie had, and we don't have a window into their marriage, but on the surface, it seems very normal. They had 4 kids pretty much back to back that kind of look like stair steps. You see pictures of her and Brandon preparing for marathons or, having run a marathon. There was the video.
Yeah, he's encouraging her. Like,
Yeah.
the kids are there. Yeah.
So I think the one thing that just blows my mind is that clearly at some point last year, Lori started talking to Melanie about her beliefs, her new beliefs that involved Chad and preparing a people or whatever.
Yeah.
And man, can you imagine how Brandon felt just out of the blue? Not only to find out your wife wants a divorce, but that she is in a crazy cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and then what happened too is after she moved to Rexburg on November 12th and 14th, she trespassed and went to Brandon's parents' house and tried to see her kids. And the cops were called and she got arrested.
Yeah. And if you can Google the 911 call from Brandon's dad,
Yeah, it's chaos.
it is mass chaos.
It's absolute chaos. He sounds really scared.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, maybe Brandon had been shot at that point. So they
Yeah.
knew there was a real danger. And you can hear the terror in Brandon's dad's voice.
Because they're in his garage.
They're in his garage. And not only that, Alex drove her there, and Alex was the one that bailed her out.
And you have to remember, they know that Charles was shot.
Right.
So Brandon knows that. His dad knows that.
Yep. And so Alex fronted the bail, which was $1,950 to get her out.
Yep.
And I guess drove her back to, I don't know if that point she wasn't in Idaho. So
Yeah.
he had to have driven her to go see the kids, which is not.
I think his dad lived in Utah or something.
It is
I wanna
Utah.
say.
Yeah, it is Utah. But they said what happened was Melanie kept pushing the Ring doorbell. And it says here that Brandon answered, telling her she could not be there. Now, if Brandon, I have access to my parents' doorbell cam, so he could do that remotely. I don't think he was actually in the house, though. It doesn't make clear here.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But what happened was an officer called Melanie over the phone, and she said she hadn't seen the kids in a month and said that Brandon had kidnapped them from Arizona, which was against the custody agreement. And the officer wasn't buying it and told her she could face criminal charges if she trespassed. So it was actually the 2 days later, which would have been on the 14th, that police were called and they saw her coming out of the garage. So that's when she was arrested. She was ringing the doorbell, banging on the door, yelling, just chaos. And I just think it's funny that my kids have been kept from me since October. No, you threw their stuff on the side of the road and left them and told your husband you can have the kids.
Yeah.
You have a theory about why maybe she didn't fight harder for her kids at that point.
Yeah. My thought is at that time, she was still married to Brandon. They weren't divorced yet. And so we know Brandon was shot at on October 2nd. If she knows that and knows that's coming, and we're just allegedly saying, if she knows that's what's coming, then one, if Brandon is shot and killed, she's going to get her kids anyways. And two, then she's going to get the $1 million life insurance policy.
As well as survivor benefits for 4 kids, which I would assume at his salary would have been like the max tier. There's a max on what you can collect.
Yeah.
So she would have been living a pretty decent life.
And we're not saying that's true. We're just putting that out there that.
But, the thing to mention is that Melani had stated that Brandon had been possessed by a demon in June. So she started with the same stuff of, he's a demon and then the 2 kids are demons. And just thank goodness Brandon's sane.
I'm going to tell you, I can't wait. And we're going to talk about this later too, I think. But I can't wait to see her cell phone pings.
Oh, I know. I'm ready to see all their cell phone pings. I mean, it's gonna. I think it's gonna make things a lot more clear. And I was thinking about the forthcoming charges, whether they're murder or not. We've read online. Actually, Nate was on the Nancy Grace show, I believe yesterday, and he said the problem right now is that they seemingly know that Alex was the one that killed the kids. But you still have conspiracy to commit murder that they could charge them with if the evidence is there, and that's the same as murder. But here's my thought. If they have Alex's cell phone in Lori's apartment during the night when we believe Tylee was killed, if Lori's phone's in that apartment, it seems like murder charges are a shoe-in because then you really can't prove who killed the kids unless over a text somebody said, well, I did it.
Yep.
I just feel like maybe Lori's charges may be easier to obtain.
Yeah.
Then I'm not saying Chad he'll get the charges. The digital evidence has to be there. But I'm curious to see her cell phone pings as well. And Chad's. We don't know that Chad wasn't in that apartment that night. We have no clue because we haven't been told his pings. So right now the public assumes it was just Alex, but we'll see where those pings go.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, for me, I'm very interested in Melani. We know she's due to give birth pretty much any time now, if she hasn't already. I mean, this would be her 5th baby. After each baby, you tend to have, you don't go the whole 40 weeks. I was about to say 40 months, and that's what it feels like. But, you don't go the entire time usually with each subsequent kid. And she looked pretty big on she looked pretty far along. I would say she's got to be 8 months. I'm just curious to find out a little more about Ian, and does he stick around? Where does he tie into all this? There's just so much that we just don't know.
Yeah. And the thing that we discussed and talked about was the window of when we know, I mean, they've already come out and said that Melani has made contradicting statements in her interviews that she did on what she was on Dateline. I think she was on with Nate, and there was one other she was on.
I think that was an Arizona guy.
Yeah, one of them was a lady too, I think. So maybe 4, I don't know. But so she made a lot of statements that contradicted each other. And we looked at it today, and we were looking at when she moved in next door to Lori, right?
Uh-huh.
So she moved in to Rexburg around November 1st. Okay. So the warrant was served to search when they were doing the trying to find JJ and Tylee. So the warrant was served on November 27th. And we know she left around that time because we talked about it being rats fleeing a sinking ship. And so she was there almost a whole month and didn't see the kids.
Yeah.
Like, how does that make sense?
It doesn't. And I've gone back and forth about Melanie. Did she?
The Hartford Small Business Insurance knows that running a small business is a big-time commitment. So this holiday season, they're celebrating hardworking small business owners with a chance to go to iHeartRadio Jingle Ball in Miami on December 16th. Nominate yourself or another small business owner for a chance to win a trip for two. Includes airfare, 2-night hotel, tickets to the show, plus $1,000 in spending cash. For official rules and entry information, visit iHeartRadio.com/smallbusiness.
Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
No, the kids were dead. It's easy to say yes, but I don't know.
I just can't see how you can live next door. It's not like you lived across town.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she probably did. I don't know. Look, you don't go from being a married mom of 4 to ditching your kids, moving to Rexburg 2 weeks after her divorce is final. She's marrying Ian. His divorce has only been finalized 4 months before. And I mean, she knew JJ and Tylee. One of Lori's excuses was he's with somebody that's a therapist. Well, I don't know of anybody who accepts children overnight that's a therapist. And Tylee, they were there a week before Tylee went missing. Oh, she's out with friends. I mean, who makes friends in a week that you go hang out with all day and all night?
Yeah. And she had visited, so Melanie had visited prior to moving there. So she didn't see him then either.
Right.
So it's just all this, and then you don't see him. Now, could they have lied to her and said, whatever? Sure. But I would have thought in the interview, she would have said, yeah, I found that really odd.
Yeah. And in fact, I was watching one of the interviews back, and she referred to Tylee in the past tense, which is always a red flag.
Yeah.
So I do believe Melanie had to have kind of known what was going on. I mean, it's scary to think that she was trying to get her kids and all that. But, I mean, Alex had killed kids. I don't think he would have thought twice. And he was sort of there for all of Tylee and JJ's moments. It seemed like Alex was always around. So if he could kill them, I mean,
yeah,
I don't think he would
scary.
hesitate. So that's kind of all about Melanie. Well, the other thing too, just further proof that that they are, and this is part of the new statement that came out from the courts about Brandon and Melanie's case, which is on top of her being a person of interest in Brandon's shooting. It says here that Rob Wood, the Madison County prosecutor, has said that Melanie is a person of interest in the other multiple felonious acts, including the missing children, both now confirmed deceased. Mother's media interviews throughout this litigation are filled with conflicting statements from one interview to the next. So I think the clock's ticking on Melani Pawlowski. I kind of thought maybe they would get her before she gave birth. I think that would be the safest thing to do, honestly. I don't trust her with that baby.
Yeah.
And I don't see where law enforcement would, but they got to be sure it's in the bag. So if they haven't arrested her, there's a reason. And I kind of think, I mean, maybe this is just like the Hollywood ending I want, but I imagine on the day where somebody like Melanie is arrested, it would be like a sting thing that happens where they get them all in one shot and then they announce charges for all of it. Just, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would love to see it play out.
And we forgot to mention when we were talking about Melanie knowing where the kids were that, okay, one of her statements was the kids are with friends, like Tylee was with a friend, JJ's with a therapist. And then later on or in another interview, she says that Lori has had to hide them because of threats from Kay and other people. So, it right there.
Yeah. She smells rotten.
And her attorneys were sitting right with her in every one of those.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that her attorneys would encourage her to go on air.
Yeah, it's like one of the things you don't do.
No, I mean, that's like the worst thing you can do to me. I mean, it never ends well if you're guilty.
Yeah.
You're always going to slip up. So we're going to do some more research on Melanie, trying to find out a little bit more about her marriage to Brandon and that sort of thing. But from what we see, it looks pretty typical on the surface. And Fruit Loop, you took a dive today.
I took a hit for the whole team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because this is not my favorite subject. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you run with this.
So we asked you guys, what would you like to hear more of? And some of it was Melanie and Brandon and that whole story. And other people want to hear more about preparing a people and AVOW. So I got nominated to go down this rabbit hole, and it's very, very deep.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially, AVOW was first, and preparing a people came after that. And all the research I've read on today, this is what everything is saying, and that's what happened. So they're calling this a Hydra cult. And again, these are just like we researched it, and this is what we dug up. So all this is alleged, but we're just giving you some information. So a Hydra cult is centered around an ideology of more than one person, and that is what people claim preparing a people to be. There's multiple heads to this dragon, and when you cut off one head, multiple heads pop up in its place. So there's a lot of people that are involved in this area. Now, I'm not saying that there were more than one person involved in the road that Lori and Chad chose, and Alex and those people. But just this group in general and their thoughts and their ideology and everything, it's deep. It's morphed from things that it was to start with, and then when additional people have joined, they've added their visions. AVOW was started by Roger Young, and it was a paid forum. And when I throw this name out there, everybody's going to say, oh, okay. So he sold that to Christopher Parrott. So everybody knows who he is. And we know Christopher Parrott at first defended Chad and Lori, and then came out later on and said he was lied to and all that stuff.
Only after the bodies were found, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yes. And in this forum, people could share visions and dreams and discuss the call out and the prepping. So what the call out is a righteous group who will leave their homes and life behind and travel to special camps. The requirements to participate, they vary. So being a totally active member of the church is one of them. Having temple recommend is another. And we know by researching that prior to, I think every year you have to go before your bishop or whatever and I guess you kind of talk to him and he gives you a temple recommend, which allows you to go into the temple, the Mormon temple. So the other was having a year supply of food and storage, other supplies, including tents. So when this happens, and all this takes place, they will be given, they'll be picked up, like this equipment will be picked up in large semis and hauled to your camps. And then the people will get on a special bus that takes you to these camps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So just going back real quickly, it's kind of interesting what you say, that the people will leave their lives behind and travel to, what was it, camp?
Yeah.
It's almost like Rexburg's the camp.
And we know that's what supposedly Chad and them were saying, because I think he made a comment something about he didn't want to live in a tent or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I can agree with Chad on that. That's the
Yeah.
one thing I agree with.
Yeah. So according to what we researched, that we know, Chad Daybell is a huge believer in this. Keep in mind that this so-called call out does not come from LDS doctrine, but this stuff comes from visions from people that have claimed they've had. So that, because we know there's obviously a separation here between LDS doctrine, because we've seen people like April get on and say, I've never heard of this in my life. And she grew up LDS. So a lot of this and what I read seems to stem from visions that people have claimed, dreams and visions that people have claimed they've had, and that most of them come out of near-death experiences. So we know Chad's had those, Julie Rose had those.
Lori claimed to have one.
Claimed to have one. We don't know much about that, but she claimed to have one.
Mhm.
So that's where that's coming out of.
Can I just say, I would have been kicked out of AVAL really quickly because I would have told everybody on the message board I had a vision. You all should give me $1,000 each.
There you go. That's my vision.
Yeah.
But people did have to pay to go on this site. So, due to the call out ideology, AVAL became a forum mostly dedicated to preparedness and eschatology, which is theology concerned with death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul and of humankind. So, and AVAL wasn't the only forum of this type. There's more forums, but the call out idea went out from AVAL to other forums. So sorry guys if this is all confusing and you're like, oh my goodness, this is just what we found. So in 2006, and when that number came out, I was like, what? Like, that's not long ago. A guy named Denver Snuffer wrote a book and made all these claims. I'm not even mentioning the book, but his book became popular among these prepper forums. He started getting hostile with the LDS church, and in 2013 he was excommunicated from the church.
Oh, they snuffed him out.
He got snuffed out. Snuffer got snuffed out. And there were other books that were written as well that people just flocked to, and so you see this whole thing building and growing. And we read today that AVAL started out as this and just talking about how you could, make your food last and all this stuff. Then it completely morphed into visions and dreams. So during this time when all this stuff is happening, Julie Rowe began to post about visions on AVAL. And this is where Chad Daybell contacts her, and they write that book together with her near-death experience. She was a student of Bradley Nelson and an emotion code practitioner. So we know we've heard those terms before because that's what Zulema is.
And a cuddle expert.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with it. But so many women in this group, they deal with the healing. And I was a little shocked to learn this, that Julie Rowe told them, God told her it was good in her near-death experience, that it was a special healing gift and safe for us in the last days to help heal people when we were in the mountain camps. And I just want to say that Julie was excommunicated from the church. So
snuffed her out too.
She's gone. And it's just like one thing after the other.
Yeah.
So we know Chad Daybell also met another man claiming to be a visionary on AVAL, and we've heard this name, Hector Sosa. And he also published Hector Sosa's visions as well. So there are so many heads on this dragon.
It's just so made up. I mean, so and the forum that kind of came from AVAL eventually you had to pay to read the visions. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
so you had to pay to be on AVOW, and then this next branch off was a different branch toward, with Chad Daybell and them, and you had to pay extra to get all that stuff. So it's just crazy. And when I talk about this next part, this sums up the whole thing here. So there's a guy, his name is Mike Stroud, and he was excommunicated from the church. He was a retired seminary teacher, but he also believed in, that snuffer guy I mentioned. He believed in his doctrines of how to gain your calling and election and being personally taught by Christ himself. So when this happens, he claims you become a translated being and one of the 144,000 spoken of in Revelation. He also teaches that men need to use their priesthood more fully so they can open portals for travel and command the elements. And when you start getting into all this stuff, that's, where I say,
Yeah.
This is the part that Chad and Lori believed wholeheartedly in.
Mm-hmm.
They believed in somebody being possessed, and for people coming in. This says normally that 4 men would come in and cast out demons.
Wasn't that okay? There is something out there about Chad helping cast out demons. We'll have to find. It was with somebody.
Yeah, I remember reading it, but I don't remember where
I think it was
was.
Jason Mao, presumably. That maybe that was the purpose of that Mesa trip after JJ had been, or Tylee had been killed.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
I'd read that. I mean, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but somebody had said that there was some sort of a healing session, and that I believe it was Jason Mao, that he could get a little rough during these healing sessions, and Chad went to help. Although we still would love to know the real reason he went to Mesa.
Yeah. Yep.
Something was up.
Yep. So this guy, he also teaches that the LDS Church, the Saints, is a telestial church, and that when you get your calling and election via his methods, then you are entering a terrestrial church, which is called the Church of the Firstborn. And we know that term has been used with Lori and Chad. This is not an actual church among these groups, but it's more of like a title and a status symbol.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So this is what Chad and Lori, to me, this is the part that where we're seeing all this stuff come from.
Kind of their core beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. But that just gives you a little bit of how big, how many dragon heads are on this thing.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and I'm sure we don't know the half of it.
Yeah.
And I think with today being Doomsday, I mean, you can make all the jokes you want, and it is kind of funny to think they're sitting in their cells and they're not gone. But at the end of the day, I've always said I do believe that in some capacity, her beliefs played, and Chad's beliefs and Alex's beliefs and everybody's beliefs played a part in why everybody's dead.
Yeah.
I don't just think it was, we don't want kids, we want the insurance money, let's kill everybody and go. I do believe at the core of it, the cult is the motivation.
Yeah.
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, you go.
You're going to forget what you're going to say.
You're so right. You aren't even kidding. See, I just forgot what I was going to say.
See, I told you.
Oh, what was I going to say?
You guys, you're going to learn that.
Oh, yeah. This is more like our normal conversations right here. We act a little professional during the podcast, but if you hang out with us just normally, it's usually her saying, you're going to forget, you go, and be like, I'm not going to forget, I forgot.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Okay, she'll remember. That ball is bouncing around in there in her head. She'll hem it up in a corner in a minute. So during all this stuff that was going on, this is where Preparing a People came from. There were conferences already going on among LDS prepper crowds. And one was put on by a firm foundation, which was headed by a man named Rod Meldrum. And his conferences were becoming so popular that Mike and Nancy James set up Color My Media, which right now you can Google Preparing a People podcast and you'll get, I think it's 131 podcasts. You can't listen to them because they're taken down, but you can go and you can look and see what each podcast was about and who was on it. And the list is, there's a lot of names on the list you'll recognize. So they had podcasts where all these people taught their visions and their dreams. They had seminars, courses, special video series you could buy. Series.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world.
I caught that. Series you could buy. So that just gives you a background. And the last thing that I want to say is all these things, like Chad Daybell was so close and all into all that, who we know claimed he had near-death experiences and visions as well. And during that time, Lori was doing podcasts as well. And there were different branches of the Prepare People. Now, how do people get into this? Friends and family members.
Really?
Yeah, and they use kind of like fear of doomsday things, salvation after that, just different things like that to basically, I think, try to scare and say, what's going to happen, da-da-da-da-da.
Right, scare people into religion.
Yeah. So that's kind of the basis of what I read and found, and
it's interesting stuff.
It is to see that's where it came from.
Yeah.
And it's not everybody in Preparing a People have went down the road that Chad and Lori did. And I want to make that clear.
Yeah, you have to reasonably believe in every religion or every little offshoot. You're going to have the extremists.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not fair to compare one person to the other when you have these people over here that maybe believe in being prepared for the end of times and all this stuff, and they didn't take somebody's life.
Right.
So
exactly.
I just want to make that clear. You
know what I think too, though, in sitting here listening to you, because honestly, you told me some things you were going to talk about, and it went over my head because I was half listening, like I always do, but you can sort of see how Lori maybe came to Chad. If she claims she had a near-death experience in Hawaii and she starts Googling visions or whatever, that might be how she stumbled upon these message boards or, so I kind of have always wondered, how did she get introduced? And it kind of makes a little sense to me now. Maybe that was the way. It doesn't mean that it was the way.
Yeah.
But I could see something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right. And then she starts talking to people. I mean, on the message boards I'm a member of, I have gotten to know people that I feel like I know personally, even though I wouldn't be able to pick them out in a crowd. But maybe that's how Melani Gibb came in the picture. And then we know Melanie goes to the conference with her. And then apparently Jason Mao introduces Lori to Chad. And so there's that group.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If anybody knows if that's how they've heard that I would love to know.
Yeah.
But, and that may be something that's not even known yet, but.
Yeah, we may find that out.
But it seems like it was out there, and if you were willing to pay the fee, you could find out visions and.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah. And this AVAL group, this is also the group, and I don't know, you guys will remember it probably, that Hector Sosa sent out that email saying that everything was being deleted. They were taking it down. They were donating the money to some charity and all this stuff. So that was AVAL. So,
but it's separate. So if I'm understanding you correctly, AVAL is sort of separate from Preparing a People.
Yeah. So AVAL was first, and then Preparing a People came next.
Because I remember after all this hit the news, it was probably maybe December, January. Preparing a People put out a statement really distancing themselves from Chad and Lori and Melani Gibb and everybody. So it's kind of like a platform where people come together to share their stuff. And it's not like Chad and Lori created Preparing a People.
Exactly. He spoke.
Right.
Chad Daybell spoke at a good many of those. But, in their defense, I mean, up until that point, he had done nothing wrong.
Right.
So he's sharing his near-death experiences, and he's going over and traveling and going to all these places and talking at these events. So they did separate themselves. And I mean, I really don't blame them.
Well, of course.
And then what we just said a minute ago, they didn't take somebody's life. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's a little bit of background, and we've taken like so much of you guys' time.
Well, that's that's kind of part of it, and I don't know that we'll have another podcast for a few days unless something happens. I mean, we do still have 3.5 hours until midnight, so it's quite possible we may never talk to you again because we're going to be gone.
Yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I have to think one of two things are happening. Either they're resolving in their mind that something is amiss and it'll happen at another date, because I believe, was it Melanie Gibb that had said it was August that it was the end? I don't know. Somebody had said maybe August. So knowing them, they're probably just making an excuse. Or at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, is this the day Lori opens her eyes, sees the top, the ceiling in the jail cell, and probably not talking to Chad at this point, and she's alone in this? Not that I feel sorry for her, but I'm curious, has she had a moment where she thought, oh, wow, we're still here. Maybe this was all hokey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's so, I go back and forth, but
you would hope that she would eventually see the light and see the truth. My thing is there somebody that's contacting both of them? And we know it's recorded, so it's all recorded through the prison, what is it called, telemate or whatever.
Yeah.
So we know it's all recorded, but is somebody doing that, and that's how they're communicating back and forth? That John Smith calls Chad and talks, and then sets up and calls Lori. So,
I know it's not ethical and it's against the rules, but I mean, their lawyers are in the same building. Yeah. I'm sorry. You can say, well, by law, they're not supposed to. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
You can't tell me they're not talking in the hallway, and then when they go see their clients, maybe sort of aligning. I'm not saying that it should happen. I'm just saying if it's possible.
And it's we've seen it, like with the Warren Jeff stuff, that happens there. Mm-hmm. That people, talk with him, and then they go back and tell, that group what he's saying. So
yeah, he's essentially running that cult from prison still.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think this is a little bit different. They didn't have a compound. It wasn't like a generational thing where his father was in charge. This seems to be a newish cult. And I don't think that people that have half a brain, and I don't, that's saying a lot with this group, I don't see where anybody would risk talking to him at this point, or her. I think if you want to not be hated along with them, you kind of stopped all that last month when they found the kids on his property.
Yeah.
But then again, these aren't rational people to an extent. I'm not talking about the core group of Melanie and Chad and Lori. I'm talking about those people that surrounded themselves, and pretty much everybody we know of that was sort of part of the bigger group have all denounced Chad and Lori and what they've done. So friends probably are non-existent, and whether or not they're talking, okay, who cares?
Yeah.
So probably a very different reality for them today, maybe.
I think it'll be just like what we talked about.
Yeah.
They'll come up and say, something changed. I got a new vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't
God's given us more time. Like,
right. Or we're being persecuted, which in cults almost always is a confirmation you're doing something right.
Yeah.
That's what they believe in cults. If somebody's being locked up, then they don't want their secrets out. They're just going to lock the leader up. So, yeah.
So, guys, sorry we took so much of your time, but we wanted to get all this in one. So,
I still don't remember what I was going to say. So.
See, on the next podcast, she'll tell you what she was going to say.
I'll say it in the middle when it comes to me at a random time.
Yeah, it'll be 3 a.m. She'll remember.
I'll get up and tweet. By the way, guys,
this is what my thing was. So remember the court date on the 27th to see if we get video or not. We're hoping we do, but we'll just go from there.
If we don't, I think that we will know what happens, because it's technically a public hearing. COVID just threw a wrench in it, and I think the Edens has to be safe, but he's already ruled it could be televised. If not, we could have all been in line in Rexburg to try to get in.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye out for any news. If anything breaks, we'll let you know. Happy Doomsday to everybody. You got 3.5 hours, and then we'll see you on the other side of Doomsday.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Have a good one.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.